In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you guys how to add 3D objects into your videos. First, we're going to be tracking and then adding the objects. If you guys want to follow along, I'll leave in the description the link to the video I will be using myself. So first thing we want to do is we're going to go into Add Workspace and into VFX Motion Tracking. And then we're going to click on Open and we're going to find the video we want to use. I'll be using this video. I'm going to click on Open Clip. Next, we can see here the resolution and the frame rate of our video. So we want to set that as our Blender resolution and frame rate. So in output, we're going to set the resolution 4096 by 2160 and the frame rate is 23.98. Next, what we want to do is we want to click on Set Scene Frames. Before I do that, as you can see, our end frame is 250. We want to match the length of our frames to the video. So if we click on Set Scene Frames, Blender will automatically match that for us. Next, what we want to do is we want to click on Prefetch. This will load the video into our memory so it's easier to use inside of Blender. So now we want to start the tracking process. First thing, we're going to go here and these are the tracking settings. So the best motion model is either perspective or affine. So I'm going to go for perspective. What normalizes does is it ignores the lighting changes in your scene. If the object you're tracking or the point you're tracking has a lot of lighting change, then you want to select normalize. And now what we're going to do is we're going to come to this rock, hold down control and click. This adds a tracker. And if we press G, we can move it. If we press S, we can scale it. And if we press Alt S, we can see the bounding box. What this does, it tells Blender to search for this tracker in this area when we are tracking. Also, if we go here and click on track, we can see what we are tracking and we can change the tracker settings from here if we want to later on. These settings are for before the tracker is created, and these are the selected tracker settings. So what we can do is we can come to this rock and to start tracking, if we click on this button here, it tracks it for one frame. If we keep clicking, it keeps tracking for one frame. But if you click on this one, it will track it for the whole scene. As you can see, it tracked it. So in this scenario, we didn't have any issues. But if you had any issues, what you could do is go to the frame where it stops and go one frame behind it and either slightly move it, or if the bounding box is too close, you can either increase the size of the bounding box or rotate it, match the points again, and then continue tracking forward, and that should resolve the issue. Let's try tracking another point that can give us some problems. Um, let's track this point here, and we're going to go on frame 1 and move this here, and let's track it. The tracking failed, as we can see, and if you go one frame behind, we can see why it failed is because we're hitting the bounding box. So we can either move the bounding box or we can shrink the size of this. And if we continue tracking, it failed again and the bounding box is too small. We can change the size like this, and if we continue, it completed. Now we've done some manual tracking. You can either manually track 8 or more points throughout the video, or now we're going to try and automatically track multiple points in our video. So I'm going to go to frame 1, and then if I come here and click on detect features, this will automatically add some trackers. And if we click on this box here, we can change the settings. If we reduce the threshold to 0.1, more trackers will be placed. If we reduce the distance to 80, even more trackers will be placed. You can set it to like 100. And what the margin does is it will remove trackers from the edges of the video. So if you set it to 100, some trackers have been reduced from here. If you to show it properly, I'll set it to 500. You can see only the trackers are only placed in the center of the video. So I'll set it to 100 and then I'll track all of these. So we've lost a lot of trackers. So what I'll do is I'll detect features again at the end of the video. And then if we click on this button, it will track these backwards. So we've done our tracking. So now that the tracking is done, we want to clean up our tracks. So over here, we can either select these tracks that are going haywire and delete them manually, or if you come here into solve, into clean up and click on filter tracks and delete these tracks, this will solve most of our issues. And now we want to solve our track, so we want to select refine focal length. What this does, it tells Blender to automatically calculate the focal length of our camera. And the keyframes is we want to select keyframes where the perspective changes a lot. So 500 and 200, 200, 500. Now if we click on solve, so we have solved our track and we have a solve error of 0.68. Anything above 1 pixel is not good and anything below 1 pixel is okay. And anything below zero point 0.5 pixels is very good. So we want to refine this even further. So what we can do is we can come here into error and we can put in 1 and click on clean tracks. This will select any trackers that have an error above 1. Also, if you have a solve error that is much greater, like 5, then I recommend you put in a similar number over here, not a number that's too low, or else it will delete most of the tracks. So we're going for 1 and we're going to hit delete and then solve again. Now we have a solve error of 0.44. This is good enough, we can use it, but if we want, we could refine it even further by entering 0.6, clean tracks, delete, and solve. Okay, so now we have a solve error of 0.3. So what we want to do next is we're gonna come down here in solve tab and select set as background, set up tracking scene, and now we want to go here and find a good spot, and we want to set this area as our floor. So I'm gonna select this point, hold down shift and select, and this I'm gonna select 3 points and I come here into orientation and select floor. Also, I'm gonna click on this and set origin and click on this one and set x-axis. This will set the rotation. Also, I can come here, select these two and set scale. This will make it smaller. Now I'm gonna go into layout and hit 0 on the numpad to go in our camera view. And if I scrub through the timeline, you can see this is tracked in our scene. Now what we want to do is we want to go into our render settings and change our render engine to cycles. If you have a compatible graphics card, then I'm going to change your device to GPU. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this plane and I'm going to add my own and go into object and into shading, into visibility and select shadow catcher. What this does is if you go into render view, it catches the shadow, but we aren't seeing the background anymore. So we're going to go into render settings, into film and enable transparent. As you can see, this plane allows us to cast the shadow and apply it onto the video. Also, the background video isn't as clear, so I'm going to select camera and go into the data settings, and in background images opacity I'm going to set this to 1. Now we want to match our lighting. So first thing is I'm going to delete this light in our scene, and I'm going to go here into shading. I'm going to go into camera view, into rendered view, and over here where it says object, I'm going to change this to world. And if you have node wrangler enabled, you can just hold on Control T and click on background. If you want to enable Node Wrangler, you can go into Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and Node Wrangler. Over here, just enable this. And once you have it enabled, just hold on Control T, and you have an environment texture. Click on Open and find your environment texture. I'll be using this one. And if we change the rotation in the Z axis, you can see our shadows are changing. So I'll use this rotation. And now in layout, we have our scene complete, and you can change this to anything else. You can add your own objects. And if you hit render image, here it is. And this took a lot of time to render. So if you want to optimize it a little bit, you can go into compositing. And over here, we can delete this bottom render layer, this alpha over, and just plug this into the viewer and the composite. And if we go back into layout and over here, click on this button and go into background and just remove this. Now there's only one render layer left. And if we hit render, it should be faster. There we go. Now, if you want to render out a video, you can go into output. You can change the file format to FFmpeg video. And in encoding, we can change this to MPEG-4. And in the output directory, you can select wherever you want to save this. And if you click on render animation, it will render out the entire video. This is the final result I was able to come up with. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing and liking the video.